So let's talk about the motherboard first. As you can see here, I'm actually using an Asus Prime Z270A motherboard for this. You know, there's a lot of different other motherboards that you could pick and choose from. The biggest thing is you want to pay attention to the number of PCIe lanes that this motherboard has, and make sure that, you know, if you're planning on running 6 GPUs, to make sure that it at least has 6 PCIe lanes. You know, I'm going to be running 8 on this. Now, this only has 7 PCIe lanes, but there's an M.2 port right here where I can actually add an extra PCIe lane to support that 8th GPU. The other thing is you want to do some research into your motherboard. Now, you can see right here, it says the chipset in memory, so it's an LGA 1151 socket for 7th and 6th generation Intel Core processors. And so you're going to want to make sure that you get the correct CPU to match this motherboard, because if you don't get the right one, it won't work. So it's more, you know, not just the socket size, but also the generation version too as well. Also too, on the memory, you notice this says 64 gigabyte DDR4. So when you're using when you're choosing your RAM for this too as well, you're going to want to make sure that it's DDR4. And so real quick here, while I got the RAM right here, so right now I got some Crucial, and it's an 8 gig DDR4. Now I'm using 8 gig because I'm going to be running Windows on this machine, but if you wanted to, you could run a Linux-based operating system like Hashrate, Simple Miner, Hive OS, things like that, and you could get away with a 4 gigabyte stick of RAM. But because I'm running Windows, it's recommended to use at least 8 gigabytes. In my opinion, you're going to have a slow mining rig if you try to go with anything less than that. And so, this, you know, while we're over here too as well, mine's will cover the CPU. So as you can see right here, I got a Celeron CPU for this. Now, you know, you might be asking me, is it better to get a more expensive CPU? If it's just for the purpose of mining, go with the Celeron or the Pentium processor, because you're really not going to be wanting to CPU mine and GPU mine at the same time. But as you can see right here, this is an LGA 1151, and it is a, I don't know where it's stored at on here, but it is a 6th generation or 7th generation Celeron processor. So you just want to make sure that when you're researching this stuff, I don't know if it says it right on the side here or not, but you just want to make sure that you get the correct CPU to match that supports the motherboard, and you want to make sure that you get the correct RAM that supports the DDR form factor, and, you know, has enough RAM to support the operating system that you want to run. So really, these 3 components right here, the RAM, the CPU, and the motherboard, they all kind of tie in with each other, and so it's important that you get all 3 of these components so that they're compatible with each other, so that you don't have any issues later. Alright, so now let's talk a little bit about the graphics cards I'm going to be using. The ones that I actually going to be using for this mining rig build are Gigabyte 1070 8 gigabyte cards. They're a pretty decent card to mine with. They're not the most popular to mine with these days. Now, again, I want to emphasize there's a lot of different graphics cards that you can pick and choose from to use to build your mining rig. You know, this is going to make up the bulk of the cost, and so it's also going to project how profitable your mining rig will be, depending on what card you get. So I'm going to have not only links down in the description to help you out with the motherboard, the CPU, and the RAM, but I'm going to have a guide in the description as well to help you kind of find the right GPUs for your mining rig needs. And so, like I said, I'm going to be running 8 of these in conjunction with this motherboard. And so these are the 1070s. You know, if I was looking at building a mining rig right now at this stage in the game, I probably, if I was in the market to buy some graphics cards, I would be looking at like a 1660 Ti, or maybe a 1660 6 gig, or, you know, maybe even a 2060 Super. But I'm actually just kind of cleaning this rig out and rebuilding it and just showing you guys how to build one. So I'm going to be using the 1070s for this build. Alright, so now let's talk a little bit about the risers I'm going to be using. These mining risers right here are what allow you to be able to attach multiple GPUs to the motherboard to make a more efficient mining rig. Now, these aren't very expensive. They cost anywhere from a couple dollars on upwards to $7. And so there's a lot of different versions that you can pick and choose from. Again, I'm going to have a link down in the description below to some of my favorite risers I like to use. but you're going to want one of these for each GPU that you plan on running. So just keep that in mind. The other thing to keep in mind about this component is it's probably the most faulty piece of equipment that you're going to have on the mining rig. Meaning that these do tend to go bad quite frequently, and it'll cause it'll cause your mining rig to crash, freeze up. It just causes all kinds of random errors. And so, they're pretty cheap, so you just replace them when they go bad. So, keep in mind when you're buying these, and not only should you buy one for each GPU, but get a few spares. That way, if you do have any rig crashes or issues, you can replace it right away. So they're pretty cheap. Like I said, they're the number one cause of rig crashes, so you always want to make sure that you have a couple extra on hand. Okay, next I want to talk about the SSD, or the storage device. Now, depending on what operating system you're gonna, you plan on running, will ultimately determine what size, disk drive should you get. So if you're just going to use something like hash rate or simple miner, or maybe Hive OS, you can get away with a 16 gigabyte thumb drive and just load that on that, this thumb drive. And so I'll show you guys how to do this in another video, but again, I'm going to be planning on running Windows on this. So I got a 120 gig SSD right here. These cost about, somewhere between $40 to $60 depending on the market when you get them. But again, I'm going to be running Windows on this, so I need a little bit extra space to be able to run that. And so I went with a 120 gigabyte hard drive on that. I think that you could get away with a 60 gigabyte hard drive or SSD if you're planning on running Windows, but with the virtual memory and all that other stuff, it's always nice to leave a little bit of headroom. And so I'm going to go with the 120 gig. That's what I usually go with on most of my mining rig builds. That's really it for the SSD. Alright, so now it's time to go over the mining rig frame, and might as well go over the power supply while it's laying in there. So there's a couple different ways that you can go about, getting a mining rig frame. Now, obviously, you can purchase one for pretty cheap off Amazon. Again, I'm going to have a link down in the description below to help you, decide which route you want to go. For my personal situation in my mining rig farm, I like to build my own custom. You might like to build your own custom too, depending on, what size of GPUs you plan on running, things like that. And so, again, I'm going to have a guide down in the description that'll help you, choose the right mining rig frame if you're looking to just buy one off of Amazon for about 30 bucks. Or if you want to build your own, I got a DIY plan in there as well. The other thing, the most important thing that I want to mention here is the power supply. So this is an EVGA 1600. I think it's a G2, so it's a gold rated. Because I'm going to be running these 1070 cards, I went with the 1600 to leave me some headroom. The biggest thing is that, you want to make sure that you kind of oversize your power supply, just because, graphics cards, they do use a good bit of electricity. You're going to be mining with this thing 24/7, so the last thing you want to do is kind of underpower your power supply, and then it causes clipping, your rig starts crashing, things like that. The other thing is what I like about EVGAs, you can tell that their cables are pretty, they're quality cables, so you get what you pay for. There is some cheaper power supplies that you could go with, but, I've seen a lot of people have, rig crashes and things like that, and as you can tell, I've ran quite a few of these rigs, and I haven't had any problems with my power supplies, so I don't mind paying the extra buck to get a good power supply. Plus, it comes with a 10-year warranty, so if anything goes bad, I can replace that inside that 10-year warranty. So that's really it for, as far as the mining rig components go. That's really it. There's some other accessories and little adapters and stuff, which I'll be going over later. But let's just get started and let's start building the mining rig. Alright, so the first thing I always like to do is just get the CPU installed into the motherboard before I go ahead and attach it to the frame. So it's pretty easy. Go ahead, open up your CPU, get it out of the box, and, kind of be careful when you're opening it because there's some thermal paste that's stuck to the CPU fan. But, you kind of just want to open this like this. Be careful with this too. Don't touch the bottom. And then what you want to look for when you're installing this CPU is you want to look for this mark right here. Now, obviously, what I wanted to do first was open up this door, and there should be some kind of marking on the corner of the motherboard, but whether it's like a dog-eared corner or something like that. And then you see that there's a mark right there on the CPU. I don't know if you guys can see that or not. Hopefully you can. And you want to match those markings up and drop the CPU in there. So it's pretty simple, pretty basic. And then that's it. Lock the latch into place. The next thing you're going to want to do is open up this fan right here. Now, it's a couple things you need to be careful of. There's already thermal paste applied to this, so you want to be careful and not touch that, okay? Super important. The other thing is just undo this fan like this, and then go ahead and mount this down to the motherboard. Now, it should snap into place like that, and then what you're going to want to do is turn these counterclockwise, each one of them, to lock that CPU into place. And then on your motherboard right over here, there should be a 4-pin for the fan, and it'll say CPU fan, and just make sure that you plug it into that. And that's basically it for installing the CPU. Alright, so now we're going to get ready to install the RAM. Now, we kind of already went over, the form factor and everything, so the biggest thing is it plugs into this memory slot right here on the motherboard. And so it's pretty basic, pretty simple. Depending on your motherboard, if you're just running one stick of RAM, the recommended slot to use for this particular motherboard is this second slot right here. So it'll vary. It'll be specified in the directions that you get with the motherboard if you're running just one stick. So, it can vary from motherboard to motherboard, but that's really it for installing the RAM. Okay, so now I'm going to grab the motherboard right here and install it. Now, I already have these holes pre-drilled. Depending on your frame that you get will, ultimately determine where you should align these holes up. But the other thing you're going to need is just some short self-tapping screws like that if your mining rig frame doesn't come with them. And you're going to need a regular screwdriver. You don't want to torque these down with a drill. You want to be very, very careful when you torque these down. And I recommend at least putting 5 screws in it. The more the better. But you just want to kind of tighten these down. So that's really it for this step. You just fasten it down. Make sure they're snug. Put one in every corner. And at least one in the middle to make sure that it's properly secure. Just want them snug too. You don't want to over tighten them too much. So otherwise you snap that motherboard and you're done. So okay, so now we're ready to install our power supply and our SSD. So the biggest thing is you want to get your power supply out of the box. Hopefully you can see these labels right here. There's a couple cables that we need to be able to hook this into the motherboard, so that way we can move on to the next step, which is installing our operating system. So if you look at the cables that came with your power supply, there should be a 24-pin cable. You'll notice it because it's one of the widest cables that you get with your power supply. And then also too, on these EVGAs, you get another cord too. It's an 8-pin, but it'll say CPU on it. And so these are the 2 cables that you're going to need first to be able to get this running so that we can install the operating system on this. So I got my 24-pin cable here. I'm going to attach it to my power supply. Okay, and I'm going to take this off here because this is in the way. And attach it to one of the CPU pin ports on my power supply as well. So now you got the 24-pin connected, and we got the 8-pin CPU connected. So we can actually take this, hopefully you can see that, and I'm going to lay this down right here. And so now we can attach this to the motherboard. So what we're going to need to do from here is plug this into the motherboard right here like this. Don't be afraid to push down on it a little bit. It takes a little bit to get it snapped in. And then also too, we got another port over here, another 8-pin port on the motherboard over here. that we need to get plugged into too as well. So these are the two cables that you need to power up the motherboard. And then up next, we also need a SATA. I forgot to mention that we need the SATA cable. So, this is so that we can power the SSD. And just to kind of show you, this is a 15-pin SATA cable, so it's kind of wide. Your power supply should come with a couple of these cables. Couple things to keep in mind, and I'll repeat this throughout this video tutorial, is that with these cables right here, these 15-pin SATAs, yes, it's got 4 connectors on it, but you only want to use 2 per cable. You don't want to overload this cable. It's only rated for a certain amount of wattage, and so if you plug in, 4 things to this cable, there's a good chance that you're going to run into mining rig problems. So just keep that in mind. The next thing is that, to power up the SSD, we're going to plug this into this right here. So we got that. And then the only other thing we need to do is plug this in. There should be a port right over here for your motherboard. So plug this in like that. And so this cable actually should come with your motherboard. You should get one of these cables with your motherboard. And then plug that in like that right there. And so now we should be able to have everything that we need to be able to install our operating system and start plugging in GPUs from there. So that's really it for installing the SSD and the power supply for right now. Okay, so here we are in the motherboard's BIOS menu. I don't know if you were paying attention, but the boot up screen will tell you what button you need to press to be able to access this menu. And so for most motherboards, if you just tap the delete key when the rig first boots up, you'll be able to access this menu pretty easily. So again, you just want to make sure that you pay really close attention to what the screen says when the rig the very first second that this mining rig boots up. It'll tell you what button to actually press to be able to access it. And for most of them, it'll be the delete key. So you just want to make sure you pay attention to that. If you miss it, it's not a big deal. Just go ahead, reboot the machine, do it all over again. So here we are in the motherboard's BIOS menu, and as you can see here, there's some different menu options that we have. And so the one that I'm going to be looking at is I'm going to press F7 for advanced mode. And so what this does is it gives me a menu of different settings that I can adjust to ensure that my mining rig's going to run stable with 8 graphics cards attached to it. And so the settings that I adjust here are only going to pertain to this ASUS Z270 Prime A and AR versions of motherboards. So you're probably going to be purchasing a mining motherboard, and there's not going to be as many settings as you that you need to adjust. But I kind of wanted just to give you this over the shoulder so that you kind of got a heads up of what to expect and kind of get an idea of what you're going to be doing. So it's really not all that complicated. You just got to kind of familiarize yourself with the hardware. So I'm going to go over here to advanced mode, and there's a couple settings that I need to adjust real quick to be able to get this to work. I think the first one's in system configuration, and then I go to DMI OPI configuration and adjust this max link speed to Gen 2. So that's one of the biggest things that you're going to have to pay attention to. Some of these motherboards are going to have like a max link speed or a PCI link speed that you're going to have to adjust. And, some of them prefer Gen 1, but this motherboard prefers Gen 2. So I'm going to set it to Gen 2 for this. You're just going to have to kind of play around with it and, familiarize yourself with that. I don't think I need to adjust anything there. I'm going to go down to PEG port configuration and adjust all these to Gen 2 as well. And I don't think I have to mess with that. PCH configuration, PCIe. Set this to Gen 2 as well. And nothing in there. I think onboard devices. Now typically I would disable the audio on the motherboard, especially on a dedicated mining rig. I don't want anything that I don't really need, but because I'm using a capture card to record this, I don't want to disable the audio just yet, because then it would mess up the recording. So, but normally you would want to disable that. The other thing too is, because I'm using an M.2 adapter to get the 8th GPU, I'm going to have to set this to PCIe mode. And then I think that's it for this right here. And then what I want to do is go over here to this right here and restore AC power loss. So this one's kind of important because I want my mining rig to boot back on. If the power was to go out, obviously the rig's going to turn off, right? Because there's no electricity. But if the power were to come back on, the power supply would detect that, send a signal to the motherboard, and it would reboot the rig. So you always want to keep that enabled. And then the last thing that I want to go adjust is this above 4G decoding. You want to enable this. So if your motherboard does have any kind of above 4G decoding setting, it's super, super important. That's probably the one most important setting out of all the mining motherboards that you want enabled. Now some of them won't have that option, and it's okay, but if it does have it, just make sure that you enable it. The only other thing here that I see that I might have missed is I want to enable fast boot, and so I want this to be 0 seconds as well too. So that just makes sure that the the computer boots as fast as possible. So from here, I'm just going to go down here to save changes and exit, and review the settings that I've changed, and basically okay them, and now the mining rig should reboot. Is hop in our Discord. Again, there's going to be a link down in the description for this, and then look underneath the free resources tab. Okay, in the free resources there's a Windows 10 image file, so it's an installer disk. Okay, so you're going to need to click on this, go to that page, push the green button over here, and download it to your computer, whatever, if you're on a laptop or whatever. The other thing you're going to need to do is burn this image file to a USB. And so if you're on Windows 10, you're going to go over to Rufus. Again, I got a link in the Discord for this, but you're going to download, you're going to install Rufus. Okay, so just install this 3.8 version right here if you're on Windows, and then if you're on Mac, head over to the Mac version of it. Again, there's a link in the Discord for the Mac users, and just go ahead and download the Mac version of this. Once you have that installed on your computer, what you're going to do is you're going to take your thumb drive, you're going to plug that into your computer, and then underneath device on Rufus, you're going to select the thumb drive that you have plugged into the computer, and then over here you're going to go to boot selection, and you're going to hit select on this right here and find the Windows 10 file that you downloaded to your computer. And then once you have all that ready, just hit start. Now, a couple things that you need to be mindful of. If you have any important files on this USB thumb drive, you need to get rid of those and download them to something else first, because it's going to erase all the files off there. But then it's also going to take about 20 minutes to burn this to this thumb drive. But once it's done, essentially what you have is a USB bootable disk of Windows that you can load on as many mining rigs as you want. So it's pretty cool. It doesn't cost you anything, and again, we got all the free resources that you need for this in our Discord. We'll see you back out in the shop. Okay, so now we are ready to install our copy of Windows that we flashed to our thumb drive. And so what you need to do is you need to plug that USB drive that you just flashed into the motherboard, and hook up a monitor too as well, and then just boot the computer on. You may need to push a button on the motherboard, just kind of be forewarned about that. Some of the motherboards will require you to push a button to get it to boot. The other thing is that in order to get to this screen, if it doesn't automatically take you to this screen, you may need to access the motherboard BIOS and select the thumb drive as the boot drive. So but if all went well, you should be greeted with the screen like this right here. And so what we're going to do is just select whatever country that you're in, and then hit next. And then we're going to go install now. And this process is going to take about 20 or 30 minutes. Your computer is going to restart a couple different times throughout this process, so just, kind of be patient with it. Okay, so now we're just going to accept the license terms and hit next. And then we're going to go to custom install. And then you're going to select the SSD drive that you installed from the previous steps. So we're going to select that and we're going to hit next. And then this process will probably take about 10 or 15 minutes. Windows is going to copy the files and install any updates that it needs to do. Okay, so now our computer has restarted a couple different times. What you're going to want to do from here is just select whatever country that you're in, hit yes, select the country again, and then skip this, the keyboard layout. Again, this might take several minutes. It might check for updates. Okay, so you're going to set this up for personal use. And then you're going to go over here to offline account and create an offline account. And select limited experience. And then you're just going to name your computer. Hit next. Create a password. Make sure you can remember your password. And then we're going to say no to Cortana Personal Assistant. We don't want that. And then this is important too. We're going to check and turn all these off. We just don't need these settings for the mining rig. It's just all it's going to do is just hinder your mining experience. So just make sure that you disable all these and then hit accept. And here we are now. You should have a screen that looks similar to this. And we have just installed a working copy of Windows 10 onto the mining rig. So that's pretty much it for this step. Let's go ahead and move on to the next step. Okay, so now we got our Windows installed. We are ready to adjust some settings in Windows just so that we can mine efficiently. So the first thing we're going to do is go down to the search bar, type in run, and go from here. And then you're going to type in this Netpluiz. I don't even know how to pronounce it, but this is how you spell it. Netpluiz. Hit OK. And then what you're going to want to do is uncheck this box right here. Hit apply. And then you're going to type in your password that you set up when you installed Windows. And so what this does is it allows the computer to automatically log in so that you don't have to type in that password every single time. So it makes it super efficient for when you're trying to remote boot your computer and stuff like that. So you're going to want to do that first. Okay. The next setting we're going to want to do, let's see here, let's pull open my Discord. So there's going to be also some free resources in the Discord as well. There's going to be underneath the free resources section, and again, there's going to be a link down in the description below to our Discord, but you're going to want to download this one right here. It says download this to disable Windows Defender in Windows 10. So you're going to click on that link in the Discord, and then you're just going to click download, and then hit save. And then we're going to open the folder, and you're just going to drop this into your desktop. So just drag it over there. So now we should have that in the desktop. So what this is going to allow us to do is disable some settings inside of Windows. So what you do is just click on that bat file, and you're going to type yes to that, no to that, no to that, yes to show computer shortcut on desktop, Show file extensions, yes. Disable lock screen, yes. Enable classic control panel, no. Hide indication for compressed NF, no, we don't need to mess with that. Disable Windows Update and sharing, yes. Remove pin to start, yes. Classic vertical icon spacing, no, don't have to mess with that. Remove versioning tab from properties, no, we don't have to mess with that. Disable jump list, no. Remove telemetry and data collection, yes. Apply Internet Explorer 11 tweaks, no. Disable Cortina Bing search and search bar. I always do no to that. Change, you could do yes to that too, but I like to have the search bar down at the bottom, and we've already disabled Cortana, so we don't really need to mess with that. But then change logon screen background with accent color, no. Disable Windows error reporting, yes. Disable automatic Windows updates, yes. Disable hibernation, yes. Apply registry tweaks, yes. Disable tracking services, absolutely. I'm going to say no to that. Disable Windows search, no. Disable superfetch, no. Disable Windows Defender, yes, absolutely. Remove scheduled tasks, no. Remove Windows default apps, yes. And let's just let this run for a minute. And so it's going to apply all these settings, and it makes it super easy. Again, that link's in our Discord underneath the free resources section, so there's going to be a link down in the description below to be able to do all that. So we've already made 2 setting changes here. There's a few more settings that we're going to need to change. I'm just going to let this run for a minute. And disable OneDrive, yes. Block telemetry servers, yes. And that's it for that. The next one, we're going to go into our power settings here. So just go down to your search bar, type in power, and then hit enter. And so then what we're going to do here is go into our additional power settings up here, and then click this right here, and then make sure we check the box high performance. Change plan settings, and we're going to set this to never, and make sure that both of them. Change advanced power settings. We're going to make sure that the PCIe Express link state power, make sure that that's set to off. So it should be set to off by default, but in case it isn't, just make sure you set it to off, okay? And then also turn off hard disk. I think, let me see here. Let me see here, I don't think we need to mess with that. So let me make sure, double check that. Turn off hard disk, okay, so 0 minutes. So you just want to type a 0 in there. So, and then hit OK to that. And then, so we get our power settings changed. The next setting that we're going to need to change here is our virtual memory. So you're just going to right click, go to System, and then type in performance. If I can spell performance here. And then it should pop up adjust the appearance and performance windows. Okay. So you should have a box that opens up like this. You're going to push adjust for best performance. And then you're going to go to advanced. And then you're going to go down here to change. And you're going to uncheck automatic manage paging file size for all drives. So then right there, uncheck that, and then check this right here for custom size. And then what we're going to do here is put in the recommended. So this one's saying recommended 1903. 1903. And then we're going to go with, I'm going to go with 20,000 here. Now, depending on what coin you're mining, we're going to be mining Ethereum with this. That's what I'm going to set this up with. But some of these coins may require you to have a higher VRAM than this, you know, 30, 40,000. Coins like Beam and Grin will require that. So just keep that in mind. So that right here says the changes you have made require you to restart your computer before they can take effect. Okay. And then just hit apply and hit OK. And so that's it for that one. This next one here, we're going to disable Windows Update. So we're going to type in run, hit enter, and we're going to go back here and we're going to type in services .msc. So we're going to hit OK. And we're going to scroll all the way down in here until we see Windows Update. And what this is going to do, and I probably should have prefaced this real quick to let you know that, let's see here. Before you do all that, you may want to go over here and go to the Windows Update. And so how I got there, I'll show you this again. So just go to Windows Update and Settings. So the second you type in Windows Update and Settings, and you may want to try and fetch an update and make sure that you update the system. Now I've already done that on this computer. It takes about 30 minutes, but you just want to make sure that you get as many updates as you can before you disable this. So now we're going to go down to Windows Update, click on this, and we're going to go to we're going to push stop. That's going to close that out, and then you're going to put in disable. You can hit apply and OK from there. So there's that. The next setting, again, we're going to go to run, and we're going to type in gp edit.msc and hit enter. And then we are going to go down to administrative templates, and from here we're going to go down to Windows components, and then from Windows components we're going to go do Windows updates, automatic updates. Okay, so we're going to disable this one and just click disabled. And how I did that is I right clicked on that and then just click apply and OK. There's that. And then the other thing that we're going to do is we're going to go down to the start menu again, and we're going to type in control panel. Hit enter, and then from there we are going to go to programs and features, and then we're going to, so you're going to go to, just so you know again, we're going to go to turn off Windows feature, or turn Windows features on or off. And then we're going to scroll down until we get to this SMB 1.0 file sharing support, and we are going to uncheck this. And so that's it for now. So we're going to hit restart now, and it's going to restart the computer, and it's going to apply all these settings. Again, there's going to be links down the Discord. If you need any help with this, you know, if you get stuck anywhere, again, you can always hop in our Discord and get some help. So, so I'm just going to go ahead and restart this and apply the settings. Okay, so now we got everything set that we can start installing our GPU. Now, for my particular situation, I want to be able to use this M.2 port on the motherboard as an extra PCIe lane, because I only got 7 PCIe lanes right here, so I could technically only run 7 GPUs. But with this adapter right here, I can actually install this real quick and create an 8th PCIe lane. So you may have noticed when I adjusted the BIOS setting for this, I set it up for PCIe. Now, most of the motherboards that you get these days, you won't have to do this because they have 13 to 19 PCIe lanes, but because of this particular situation, with the motherboard that I'm currently using, this is you know, this is what I have to do. So you could actually skip this step if you don't need to use the M.2 port. The other thing to mention about this while I'm installing this real quick is that I could actually use this as an SSD drive. They do make M.2 SSDs that you could plug in there, and it actually supposedly makes it boot faster. So I don't know how much faster, but you know, I'm using a regular SSD, so, and I want to run 8 GPUs on this, so I'm using this instead. So again, you may need to, you know, you could probably skip over this step if you wanted to, but I just wanted to show you folks how to install one real quick and, you know, what this port could be used for. So this also needs to be powered. Again, remember, I got a 15-pin SATA cable right here. I already have one device plugged into it, which is the SSD. You can only technically, you're only supposed to, the rule of thumb is to only use 2 of these connectors per cable. So now I have 2 devices plugged into there. You know, I shouldn't, you know, that's maxed out now, so I shouldn't plug any other devices into this, okay? So now I have an extra 8 PCIe lane. I can run 8 GPUs on this motherboard. We are set to install our first GPU. So now I got my M.2 port installed. I'm ready to test it out and install my first GPU. So obviously the first thing you're going to need is, you know, get one of the graphics cards out of the box. The other thing that you're going to need is a GPU riser, so get one of those out of the package. And then also, too, you're going to need a couple more cables from your power supply. So right here, I got a VGA cord for my power supply to power my GPU, and I got a 15-pin SATA. So you're going to want to plug these into the proper ports on the power supply first, like that, and then plug in your SATA as well. And then what we're going to want to do is just plug this into the motherboard. So I'm going to test out the M.2 port, so I'm going to plug one into that one first. And then to power this riser, we're just going to snap that in there like that, make sure that's all good and tight. And then we can install this onto the GPU itself. So basically right here, what you're going to want to do, snap that in there like that, and then lock that forward. Make sure that that's good and flush. You don't want to see any copper sticking out like that. And then to power it, just plug that VGA cord into the top, make sure it snaps in, and then just mount it to your frame. So we just want to install one GPU to get it started, to get the drivers installed and test everything out. Okay? So now the next step is just to install the drivers on Windows and get Windows to recognize this one card first before we plug in any of the other GPUs.
Okay, so now we have a first GPU installed on the mining rig. By now you should have powered back up the rig, make sure that it's hooked up to the internet, and we're ready to install the drivers to test out our graphics card. So there's a couple things that we're going to need to do, and again, this process is going to be for the NVIDIA cards. If you have AMD cards, it's very similar, but it's a slightly different process. So if you need some help, just hop in our Discord. Again, there's going to be a link down in the description for that. So the very first thing that we're going to want to do is right click on the window, go to Device Manager, and you can see right here underneath display adapters, it says, you know, obviously there's our onboard's graphics card for our motherboard, but then it says Microsoft Basic Display Adapter. So Windows may have installed a driver for it. In most cases, if you're following along with this guide step by step, it should not have, okay? And so what we need to do is just install the drivers. So there's a couple things that I want to do first to get all this set up. So the very first thing what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click on this file activator, and then I'm going to go right click on downloads, and I'm going to put send to desktop and create a shortcut. So what that's going to do is just create a desktop shortcut to our downloads folder, okay? So the next thing we're going to need to do is just go head over to the internet and just type in NVIDIA GeForce Experience, right here into the search bar, and it'll bring up this link. It says download GeForce Experience. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to click on that. We're going to download this, and we're going to click save. Okay, so what this GeForce Experience does is basically a driver suite that's going to scan your hardware and find out, what kind of, NVIDIA graphics card you have installed, and then it's going to find the best, most recent driver and install that for you. So now what we can do is go to open folder, and we should have this GeForce Experience installed. So we're just going to click on that. Install it, and this may take several minutes for it to install, so just kind of be patient with it. And then pop up a window. We're going to click agree. And there's kind of I wanted to forewarn you that your screen may flicker some during this process because it's installing the driver. It's perfectly okay if the screen goes black for a few minutes. It'll come right back. It's just installing the drivers on the graphics card. Okay, so it's going to ask you to create an account. I already have one created, so I'm just going to type in my password. Fill out the CAPTCHA. And log in. And so it may take you to a home screen like this. You just want to make sure you click on the drivers tab. So right now it's downloading the most recent driver. So it's just scanning the hardware, figuring out what driver version we need to install. Okay, we're going to click. We're going to check the box where it says Express Installation. Check yes. Again, this process may take several minutes for it to install the driver from here. Okay, so now the driver has finished installing, and so you should be greeted with a screen that says restart later or restart now. We're just going to restart it now so that way we can get ready to test out the card to make sure that everything's working properly. So if you didn't get greeted with this screen, just go ahead, go down here and just restart it with the start menu. But that's really it for this step. We're going to restart it real quick and check to make sure that everything's installed properly. Okay, so the rig has rebooted. To check to make sure that everything's installed properly, we're just going to go back down to our start window, right click on it, go to device manager, and click on display adapters, and there it is, NVIDIA GeForce GTX 1070. So it looks like everything's installed correctly, so now we can just move on to the next step, which is just testing it out real quick and seeing if it works properly. Okay, so now we got our driver installed. We're ready to test our first GPU, make sure that it hashes correctly, and move forward from there to plug in the rest of the GPUs. So again, back in our Discord here, there's going to be the free resources tab, and what you're going to need for this is you're going to need to go down and download this it's called 7-zip, and essentially what this does is it allows you to extract folders that you download as zip files from the internet. So we're just going to click on the link here, and we're just going to get any version of this will probably work. So I'm just going to get the 64-bit version. Click save and open folder. So now we have 7-zip in here. We can just click on it and install it. Close. So now we have 7-zip installed. We can extract folders. So now back in the Discord under miner software, we can download our first piece of mining software. So for this particular tutorial, I'm going to be using Ethereum for this, and so we're going to download Claymore 15. So click on the link. It's going to take you to Bitcoin Talk, and it's going to say right here, download link Mega. So we're going to go to Mega, and it's going to take you to this right here. And so what we're going to want to do, because we're on Windows, we don't want the Linux version. We want any one of these zip files right here. And so I want the newest version, the version 15. So I'm going to click on these three dots right here and go to download and download as a zip file. Now while that's downloading, I'm going to click save. But while that's downloading, I'm going to right click on my desktop, go to new, create a folder, and name it Clay 15. Okay? Because that's where we want to put that folder in. So now once this is finished downloading, we can go to open folder and we can drop this into our desktop. So just left click on it, hold the left mouse button down, drop it right there, and then we're going to drop that into our Claymore 15 folder. So now we can right click on it, go down to 7-zip, and extract files here. And again, right click on it and extract files here. So now you should have a Claymore dual Ethereum. What we're going to want to do here is just rename this. So just right click on it, go down to rename, Clay 15, and then if you click on that, let's close this out real quick. Close this out too. So now in our Claymore 15 folder, you should have some files that look like this. Okay. Now, just because we're testing this out, we're not going to configure it, but if we did want to configure it, which I'll show you guys how to do in the next few steps, you would just right click on this start.bat file right here and click edit. And this is where we can configure it. We could change out the pool address. Maybe we want to mine on 2 miners pool instead of Ethermine. And then also too, more importantly, you'd want to switch out this wallet address with yours. But because we're testing it out right now, we don't want to do that. The other thing is, because we're using NVIDIA cards, we don't need the RX boost. That's for AMD cards. So we're just going to close this out, hit save, and we're going to just double left click on this and start it up and see if it starts hashing correctly. We're going to allow access. And it looks like it's hashing correctly, 27 mega hashes. Now, we do still need to overclock these cards yet, but for right now, we're just trying to test out the GPUs, make sure it works properly. So it looks like everything's hashing correctly for right now. So now we can go ahead and install the rest of our GPUs and test those out as well.
Okay, so now we got the rig power back off. We tested out our first GPU. We know it works. It's time to start installing the rest of the GPUs. So we're going to need to get some more cables from our power supply. Start plugging those in. And we should start plugging some more cords into the power supply here. And really just start repeating the process that we did to install this first GPU. So pretty simple, just plug it in, plug it into the motherboard. Make sure it's snug. And then grab a GPU here. Again, make sure the lever's pulled back and just pop that into place like that. Make sure that there's no copper sticking out. Pull the lever forward and go ahead and mount it to the frame. So we're just going to repeat this over and over until we get all the GPUs installed. Then add our power cable to it. This is where cable management comes in handy, but sometimes getting all those cables neat could be a pain in the butt too. So, and then again, because we've already used one of the ports on this SATA cable here, we got one more port that we can use. So we're going to power our second riser with this, and just kind of repeat the process for the next 6 GPUs. Okay, so now I got 4 GPUs installed here. At this point, things are getting pretty congested, so I kind of wanted to plug in the rest of the cables that I'm going to need into the power supply so I don't have to dig my hands down in there. This may look like a mess to you, and in fact, it is kind of messy, but again, you can kind of clean this up later. We're just trying to get this set up to make sure that it works before we make sure that all the cables are neat and everything. So go ahead, plug in the rest of these cables so that way you have them and just kind of lay them off to the side over there. Then you can, you can start again, plugging in your riser, making sure that you're powering your riser by connecting that SATA cable. To finish this out, I actually am using a different GPU riser that takes a 4-pin Molex because the way that this power supply has their cables set up. So I'm kind of using a mixture of 15-pin SATA and 4-pin Molex SATA to power my risers. So just kind of keep that in mind when you're doing your research on building your power supply, but let's just keep moving right along and installing more GPUs. At this point in the game, too, I also want to mention that, you may want to stop every once in a while and, test out the GPUs. But for my sake and the way that I've been doing it over the years, I just plug up, once I get one GPU working, I'll plug in the rest of them and then try to seat the drivers on all of them at the same time. But, it doesn't hurt anything to plug it in every couple of GPUs, make sure that everything's seated properly, and then kind of go from there. Okay, so now you can see here we got all 8 GPUs installed. We've already tested out one GPU to make sure the drivers are seated correctly. And at this point, you really just want to kind of check, make sure that all your connections are tight, make sure that you have your riser powered, make sure that, they're plugged into the motherboard, everything's securely fastened, and, good to go. Make sure to check all your connections, too, down at your power supply to make sure all those are in there tightly. And that's really it. From here, we can turn the mining rig back on, test it, and see if it works.
Okay, so now our system should have rebooted by now, and we should have wiped the drivers clean. So basically we're going to go back under Device Manager and check. And you can see right here we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We got 8 graphics cards here with no drivers installed. So we're just going to kind of repeat the process that we did when we installed the first driver. Go back down to NVIDIA GeForce. You may need to go to your download folder and reinstall it if it's not already down there. So something went wrong, try rebooting your PC and launch the GeForce experience. Okay, so what we're just going to do instead is we're just going to go ahead and reinstall this. So you should still have a copy of that left in your downloads folder, and this will fix a lot of the issues. Okay, so it's recommending that we do a reboot on this. We're just going to go ahead and reboot it. Okay, so now, we've DDU'd the drivers, we've rebooted the system a couple times now, and it's time to reinstall the drivers. Now, just make sure that you have your GPU count still remains the same. If you got 7 GPUs, make sure that there's 7. I have 8 installed here, so basically what we're going to want to do now is just go back down to this NVIDIA GeForce experience and see if we can reinstall the drivers. Okay, so it's not going to let us do that, so we're going to go back to apps and features. And so how I got there, again, I just right-clicked on the window, went to apps and features. And we're going to uninstall all these. Okay, so I think I'm going to leave this last one here. Honestly, I've never had this error before, so I don't know why it's doing this, but we're just going to go ahead and try to reinstall the GeForce experience now. This should work. Again, I've never really had this error. I think it's got something to do with me recording this while trying to install the drivers, to be honest with you. So you may not even have this issue with it. Got it. So now it's checking for another update. So I do apologize about that if that's a little bit choppy to you guys, but that's kind of how it goes when you're first installing these drivers. You're going to run into some issues here and there. Honestly, I would suggest that you plug in one GPU at a time and try to get it working that way. That's probably the more proper way to do it, but I was trying to shortcut this video and just slam all 8 GPUs onto there at once, and for whatever reason, Windows doesn't really like it when you do that. So you may just want to start off slow, but again, if you run into any issues, you can just use this DDU process to kind of erase everything and then reboot and reinstall stuff. So, but also too, that's what we have our Discord for, so if you have any issues, we can kind of help you, walk you through it and stuff like that. So just keep that in mind, and don't let this issue that I had scare you. So basically from here, what we're going to do is just let this reinstall, restart the system, and we should have all 8 GPUs properly working, so that way we can go ahead and overclock them and get them up in mining. Okay, so now we have uninstalled GeForce and reinstalled it, and we should have just repeated the process that we did when we installed the first driver. And so let's go ahead and just check to make sure the system's rebooted a couple times now, and let's see if we got all of our drivers installed. And there we are, voila, we got all 8 graphics cards recognized. Okay, now I could go over to Claymore and test this, but there's a few things left that we need to do. The first thing is hop back in the Discord. Let's go over to the Discord real quick here, and we're going to need to get a copy of MSI Afterburner. So what you're going to do, again, that's under the free resources tab, just click on MSI Afterburner, and what you'll do is you'll scroll all the way down to the bottom of this page, and you'll wait for this window to load. Sometimes it'll come quick, sometimes it'll take a few minutes for it to load, but if you're on NVIDIA cards, you're just going to want to download this version right here. If you're on AMD, you're going to want to use that version. I think I already have a copy of this downloaded on here, so we're just going to go ahead right here, MSI Afterburner in my downloads folder. Again, we're going to extract it here, and we're going to go and set this up. So we're going to click yes to that. Next. Hit accept, and hit next. Now, you get here, uncheck this box. You don't need this Riva tuner. I don't even know what that is, but I always uncheck it because I don't need it. And then hit next and go ahead and install it. And uncheck the show readme, but we're going to want to run MSI Afterburner, so just click finish. And if you've done everything correctly, you should have an icon that looks something like this in the screen down here. So if it doesn't automatically open, you could just click on this. Okay. So what MSI Afterburner does is it allows us to overclock these GPUs and get better mining efficiency out of them. We can lower the power consumption with the power limit here. We can adjust the core clock. We can also adjust the memory clock. And, overclocking is kind of a science when it comes to mining with cryptocurrencies, especially with graphics cards. And, there's not a one-size-fits-all. So these settings aren't going to only apply to these graphics cards. You're going to have to kind of play around with them. But, when you're mining Ethereum, a good place to start with the power is around 60. And core clock, I know on these graphics cards, 100 is a good core clock setting. And the memory clock, because we're mining on this ETH hash algorithm, it is kind of memory bound. And so I'm going to adjust the memory to 450. I think I could push it to 500, but if my memory recalls me correctly, I think it's somewhere around 450 to 500. So depending on what graphics card you have, you're going to have to play around with these settings, maybe do some research on Reddit and see somebody else that's got that exact same graphics card. The other thing is you can kind of do it in increments. Maybe you start out with, 80 on this one, and maybe you start out at, 400 on this one. And then if you get good results with that, you can bump it up, and go 425, and then maybe bump this up an extra 10 and go 90. So you get the picture with that. So, but I know for the sake of these cards, I know it's somewhere around 100, and I know that I got to be somewhere around 450 to 500 with these, but we're going to try 500. The other thing is I like to set a static fan speed of somewhere around 70 to 80. Other people would argue with me on this, but you're going to want to be able to do that. And so how I did that was you just basically uncheck this auto box right here, like that, and then you just click right here somewhere, or you can type it in, 70, somewhere around there. And then to apply these settings, you hit there. But you're going to also want to check this box right here to make sure that those settings get saved and get reapplied anytime you reboot the system. So if you don't check this box, you're going to have to readjust these settings every time the system reboots. So you just click this checkmark box to save it, and now we can test out our GPUs to make sure that they're hashing correctly. By now you should hear the fans start to kick on and stuff like that. So we're going to go back over to our Claymore folder, and we're going to just double click on our start.bat file. And, it says also too, please consider using strap option to increase mining speed. I'll get to that in a second. We're just testing these out. And we have a CUDA error. Here we go. So there's that. Okay, so I think we got to readjust this. So with this specific miner to mine in Ethereum, there's some drivers underneath the README section here that we're going to have to install. And so, where's it at? Yeah, driver install. So it's there's a driver that we have to install and adjust the straps. We may even need to increase the virtual memory on this too as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this driver installs like that, close that out, and then right click back on our start.bat file and go ahead and set this to this. Okay, now actually I don't want it like that. I want a space, just a space in between it. So you're going to want to have a space in between this, a dash, then driver installs. Okay, now the other thing we're going to need to do is, because make sure that you're in your Claymore folder, so just click on this and then right click right here where it says Clay 15 and copy address. Okay, so how to install this driver so that we get better mining performance, and this only pertains to Claymore 15. You're not going to have to typically do this with all the other miners out there. You just put a dash right there and then backspace and then Control V, and then what you're going to want to do, because I have spaces in between rig and 1 and 1 and 1070, I have to wrap this whole thing in parentheses. So we're just going to go ahead, put a parentheses there, and we're going to put a parentheses there. Okay, and so then we're going to exit out of this and hit save. Okay, now to install this driver, it's kind of tricky, so just follow along. You right click and you run as administrator. Okay, and so it should say driver installed successfully, and it did not. Let's try it one more time. Maybe I got something wrong here. No, that's not it. Add the parentheses back. Put these back in parentheses. Driver install. Okay, so yeah, it's not driver installs, it's driver install. So that's what I got wrong. I was adding an S, made it plural at the end because for whatever reason in the documentation it says it's kind of driver installs or uninstalls. So you just need to take away the S for that. So okay, so now we got the driver installed. Okay, and what we're going to need to do to apply this is reboot the system to get it to work. So I'm just going to go ahead down here, close this out, and go back down here and hit restart. Okay, so the system should restart and apply the driver. Let's make sure that our overclock settings still stayed applied. Sometimes you gotta click on this a couple times. Alright, so we still got our driver settings. I'm going to bump this up to 65. Now you can hear our fans kicking back on again. And let's go back into Claymore. Now to run this, we're going to have to go back in here, edit, and get rid of this driver install. Okay? Now, we're going to put the strap in here, because this is, what's going to make it run faster. And you're going to have to test this out. I know that these cards work best on strap 1, but you could try 2, you could try 3, you could try all the way up to 6 on the NVIDIA cards. If you're on AMD, it's 1 through 5, and you're just going to have to test each one out. So what you're going to do is you're just going to go in there, put, dash strap space 1, hit save after you close it, and then right-click on it and run as administrator, okay? And if we've done everything correctly, we should get no errors. So it's total 8 cards recognized, strap 1 successfully applied, and we should be good to go. Cannot. Okay, so we're still getting this GPU failed error. Okay, so what we're going to need to do is go down to System and possibly increase our virtual memory. So we're going to go to Performance. I can spell performance again. And then go to Adjust Window Appearance. Go to Advanced. Change. That's what's the problem is. We don't have any. We didn't, for some odd reason, it didn't save our virtual memory. So we're going to, the first number is always going to be what you recommend. 1903. And then let's go 20,000. And then we're going to hit set. Click OK. Click OK. Hit apply and OK. Now, to apply that virtual memory, we're going to need to restart the system again. So we're just going to go ahead, hit restart the system, and hopefully everything will work correctly. Okay, so now the system has rebooted. And let's just go check one more time to make sure our overclock settings are applied. There we go, you can see our overclock settings are still applied. Go back into our Claymore 15 folder, right click, run as administrator, and boom. Now if we've done everything correctly, GPU failed. Okay. So we do have some GPUs that are working, but a few that are not. Let's see if this reboots again. Okay, so maybe we still don't have enough virtual memory applied to this, so we're going to exit out of this. And go back to adjust the settings. And let's just go ahead and bump this up to 30,000. And bump this up to 35,000. 35,000. Okay, so we're going to hit set, click OK, click OK. Okay. And it didn't ask us to restart the machine again this time, so let's just see if we can try it. And run as administrator. And there you have it, folks. All 8 GPUs hashing properly. So it's kind of good that you guys get to see me struggle through all this stuff and, kind of learn, how to kind of work through and muster through some of this stuff. So, a lot of the YouTube videos out here, they show everything that works in a perfect world, but I'm sure that, 90% of the miners out there behind the scenes, they still have these issues. They just kind of cut them out, edit them out, and stuff like that. So you're kind of getting the uncut, raw version of cryptocurrency mining. So, but the biggest thing is you don't give up. Join some discords. There's a lot of great discords out there other than ours. There's a lot of great YouTube channels out there to learn from. I recommend Bits Be Trippin'. Everything that I've basically learned has came from Carter over there at Bits Be Trippin'. He's a great guy I follow. I look up to him as like a mentor when it comes to cryptocurrency mining. He's kind of the godfather of it. So, I can't really take all the credit for this because a lot of this stuff that I learned comes from him. So, but, that's really it. You guys get to see firsthand, how it works and everything like that. And so the only thing that I would add to this, we're going to close this miner out, is, once you're done, what you're going to want to do after you test it is go back into edit and, if you want to, go find another mining pool and copy and paste that address in there. I would definitely make sure that you go create an Ethereum wallet address, whether you use like Bread Wallet on your mobile device, send it to an email to this, and then paste that in here. And then if you got multiple rigs, you can name this like rig 1. So if you put like after the wallet address, if you just put a period there, and then name it rig 1, and then if you got so that way you can identify this rig on the mining network. So and then just to kind of show you, you could go to 2 miners pool right here. So just go down to type in 2 miners into the search bar and go to their pool right here. Just to kind of give you guys an idea of what you can do. So then you'd find Ethereum, because if that's what you want to mine, click join pool, and right here, so they got some different ones that you can choose from. So like, say I wanted to use this one because I'm in the US, I would just copy this Ethereum address, and I would just right here under ePool, I would take this one and paste in a new one, and then hit save, and then close out of this, and then right click again, run as administrator, and you'll see right there it says 2 miners. So it's connecting to the network, and that's basically it. It kind of gives you an over-the-shoulder, kind of view of what you need to do to get started building a cryptocurrency mining rig, especially GPU mining. And so, I wanted to show you this Ethereum one because, pretty much if you learn how to do this one, you can work them all. Most of the miners out there, say you wanted to download and mine, Aeon. So you type in Aeon miner, Windows, and, you could find, I think it's Aeon miner, I think it's G miner too. So then, anyways, I know it's in here somewhere. It was kind of hard to find it, but I know that Aeon uses Gminer, so then you would download the Gminer client and reconfigure it and do kind of like a similar approach. It's going to have a start.bat file in that folder. You would just create a folder on your desktop to drop it into, name it Aeon or Claymore 15 or whatever, and then, go ahead and adjust your settings and stuff like that. Just keep in mind that when you switch coins, there's a good chance that you're going to have to readjust these overclock settings because each algorithm's slightly different. So that's really it for the GPU mining rig build. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you learned something, and, join our Facebook group, join our Discord. We'd love to have you guys as part of our community, and that's really it. We'll see you guys next time.